In this modern age,
Perfect.
too many people have lost sight of the true meaning of Christmas.
Mom!
Hush! Shut up, Ralphie!
So now, in the spirit of the original,
Me to you. Stop!
traditional, American Christmas,
Thanks a lot.
MGM presents A Christmas Story.
Dashing through the snow
Uncle!
in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits fly. What fun it is to ride and sing! This sleighing's on tonight.
Fragile. That must be Italian.
I think that's Sister Fragile, honey.
A Christmas Story.
Come on!
The movie that pulls off Santa's beard.
Oh, wow.
And unwraps the secrets
Didn't I get a tie this year?
of the original, traditional,
He looks like a deranged Easter bunny.
100% two-fisted, red-blooded,
It's smiling at me.
all-American Christmas. A Christmas Story.
Welcome to a new episode of R&R, or Rewind and Rewatch. And today we're going to do something a little different with this episode. I mean, it's different in that the genre doesn't really fit the channel. But it's the time of the year, you know, it's the holidays, Christmas is coming up, or whatever you decide to celebrate or not celebrate for that matter. So, at the end of the month, around Christmas time, we're going to have TJ over. We're going to be doing a top 5 Christmas movie list of all time. And I didn't want to do that list until I've seen a certain movie that I just, for the life of me, could not ever watch. I mean, I tried. I gave it plenty of chances over the years. I mean, what are we talking, like 36 years now that it's been out? Roughly. So, you know, I've given it a lot of chance. I just can't sit through A Christmas Story. I just couldn't do it a handful of times. It never held my interest. I guess I prefer my Christmas movies a little bit more edge, maybe. Just a little bit more, not as family friendly. Like I suppose, like every time I tried watching, I'm like, this is like ripping off like almost like a Leave It to Beaver style, you know, story or something, like how there's like a narration over it, and you know, I mean, it takes place in the 40s, not like the 50s or 60s, like Leave It to Beaver. But anyway, I'm getting way carried away. I didn't even know this movie really even came out in '83 when it did. It never registered with me that I can recall. I didn't know it existed for like a few years later. And I just, yeah, I couldn't ever watch it. And anytime it's on, I always bypass it. So before we get started in talking about the Christmas Story, A Christmas Story, I'm drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon hard coffee. So, the Christmas Story is, oh, well, and I just want to say, I wanted to make the list. I just wanted to make sure that I saw this movie before I made my list, just in case I really thoroughly enjoyed it and it made it into my top 5. So, anyway, here we go. Christmas Story is a 1983 American Christmas comedy film directed by Bob Clark. Now, it's interesting because Bob Clark wasn't exactly the type of guy you would probably want attached to a film like this. In the past, like especially in the 70s, before A Christmas Story, he was known for like directing and writing and like screenwriting, maybe even like I don't know the whole details of everything, but he was doing like slasher, cheap, campy horror films. His first film was Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things in 1972. And then he did other things like Death Dream, or aka Dead of Night, and Black Christmas. He did, you can go on IMDb, he did like a whole slew of like questionable, like it almost looked like softcore porn or something type of horror movies or something. I don't know, I'm not familiar with absolutely any of the movies that he did prior to Christmas Story. Things kind of took off for him a little bit after A Christmas Story. A little bit, just a tad. So, I mean, it was probably his, I'm guessing it's probably like his biggest, best film it ended up being. I don't know. Anyway, A Christmas Story is based on Gene Shepard's semi-fictional, anecdotal story in a 1966 book called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And they also then took some elements from his 1971 book that was called Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories and Other Disasters. So they kind of picked and pulled and then also made some other stuff up. I'm not going to get too into like the details behind the scenes of this movie. I'm just going to talk about the movie, and that's about it. The movie starts Melinda Dillon as the mother, and Darren McGavin as the father, and Peter Billingsley, of course, is the main character playing Ralphie Parker. Now, right away, when now that I was really having to pay attention to the film, it was interesting because I noticed right away that, like, mom seems kind of young and dad seems kind of old. Like, I don't know if that was, they just wanted certain actors, or these specific actors, I should say, and that's just how it ended up being, or if they were going for, like, a thing maybe in the early 1940s or, you know, the mid-1900s, that older men just married younger women, because she looked to me like she was, like, in her early 40s, and he looked like he was in his mid-60s, and that really was kind of it. I mean, they really, I think the actress was in her early 40s, and he was at least in his early 60s. But you could tell, like, she looked like a mother, and he kind of looked more like a grandfather at that point. And it is what it is. I don't know. It was just something that I noticed, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just thought it was very noticeable. Anyway, so the film was released on November 18th, 1983. It earned 2 Canadian Genie Awards in '84, and in 2012, it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry of the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I also did look up the house, which is in Cleveland, I believe, Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a museum, as is like one of the neighboring houses across the street. You can take tours, and I think you can rent them, both houses. Of course, the Christmas Story house is a little bit more expensive, but not the entire inside of the house was actually used in the film. Only parts of the inside of the house were used in the film. Other parts were, a set built on a soundstage. I found out a lot of my favorite Christmas movies where the houses are somewhat accurate on the inside, in reality, matching what you see on film. They weren't actually filmed inside the houses. They would like get layouts and pictures of what the house looks like on the inside, and then go to a soundstage or a gym or whatever and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars reconstructing the inside of the house so they could film it there. It's kind of a whole weird thing. But anyway, this is something that I kind of found when I was digging around. So the whole movie is presented in a series of vignettes with narration provided by an adult Ralphie. He's reminiscing about this one particular Christmas when he was 9 years old, and he wanted a Red Ryder carbon action 200 shot range model air rifle that he would see in a magazine. And he wanted it so bad that he would even like try to like take the insert from the magazine and stick it like in the middle of his mom's magazine, and then put his mom's magazine on the bed so that he was dropping hints left and right, left and right. But the initial idea of him having this air rifle was rejected. And he even like tries to get his teacher involved and visits Santa Claus at Hy-Vee's department store, which is a very uncomfortable scene. It's a very, I mean, I don't know if they were trying to scare kids with the scene or whatever, but like I was watching it and I'm like, it's weird. Sometimes you're seeing things from the point of view of Ralphie too, through like his eyes. So, like this Santa is like really weird, and his elves are very pushy, and it's almost like he's trying to upset the kids on purpose or something. So Ralphie doesn't get really upset, but he kind of can't speak. He's at a loss for words, and pretty much will take anything that Santa says as far as what Ralphie wants for Christmas. And as he's about to go down this slide, which is probably one of the more famous scenes, the slide scene, the leg lamp, these are some of the famous things from the film. He's about to go down the slide and he catches himself and he scurries back up and he tells Santa what he really wants, and Santa's just all like, ho ho ho, put boot to the face, and you see Ralphie getting pushed down by Santa's boot. Anyway, and he's always given this warning that he'll shoot his eye out. Well, you get to the end of the film, and they open up all the presents or whatever, and at first it seems like Ralphie doesn't get the rifle, the Red Ryder. But then, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, there's an extra package waiting for him, and it's the Red Ryder, and I guess like Santa brought it, according to his parents. And then Ralphie proceeds to almost shoot his eye out outside, so he has to pretend that, so that it seems like he's capable of handling such a weapon, if you will. He lies and says an icicle fell on his face, and it like cracked his glasses and then scratched his cheek. So, I mean, that's really like the whole story. I mean, from beginning to end, and then in the middle, it's kind of like these like trials and tribulations of being a child at that age, and he's this big daydreamer. Like he, dreamt of, seeing these crooks or robbers outside his house, and they were going to, come for him and his family or whatever. And he stands at the window and he takes them all out with his Red Ryder gun. He has these fanciful kind of like daydreams, if you will. Another one involves his teacher and a report that he hands in. And so there are those things, and then there's like every kid's got his group of friends or whatever, and they all have their own personalities. In fact, one of his friends, Flick, at one point like gets dared to stick his tongue to a pole, in the middle of winter, which he does. It then gets stuck, and as kids being kids, they just like leave him out there and they don't say anything. It was kind of like some of the things in the movie don't make sense. So they're all in class after recess, and Flick is missing, and instead of the teacher just going over to the window and looking outside where they just were, that she can obviously see like right there, to see if he's out there before she starts asking all these questions to the kids, she doesn't. She does not just turn her head and look outside and see Flick stuck to the pole. She starts asking all these questions. Where's Flick? Where's Flick? Do you know where Flick is? It doesn't last that long. But then she's basically directed to look outside, and then that's when she looks outside and sees him out there, and then she scurries out there without bundling up. And the cops arrive and the fire department arrive and they make a big hubbubaloo out of it when they could have just poured some warm water over his tongue and been done with it, but whatever. And Flick is also played by Scott Schwartz, which you might recognize his other big role. Well, I mean, Flick isn't a big role, but his role that was larger than in this film, he played Master Bates in The Toy with Richard Pryor. So right around the same time. So Scott Schwartz seemed to, you know, be on the up and up at that point. The Toy wasn't that big of a film. I mean, it was a Richard Pryor film. People saw it. It got shitty ratings. It happens to be like one of my favorite films, actually. Yeah, after Scott Schwartz basically became an adult, his career went in a whole different direction. And let's just say that if you decide to look up his career, do it at home and use a private browser or something. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, but then we also had the bully of all the kids, and he was played by Zack Ward, and the bully's name was Scott Farkas, or they just called him Farkas. Now, Zack Ward, this is the first time I've seen Zack Ward as a child. The first time I saw Zack Ward was in Freddy vs. Jason. And it was a very cringy, that was like in 2003, there was a very cringy scene where he's in like a bloody bathtub and he's kind of like got the whole Freddy Krueger possession thing going on. And as fun as that movie is, yeah, there's cringy moments. That's one of the cringy moments. Like, I will always, every time I see Zack Ward, that's all I can think of is that scene, how ridiculous the whole thing is. So I had not recognized Zack Ward prior to that movie, prior to Freddy vs. Jason. Everything I've seen him in after. But right away, like as soon as I saw Farkas coming in through the fence to bully the kids, I was like, oh no. It's the guy from Freddy vs. Jason. And I cannot look past that. It's ridiculous. So anyway, so they got to deal with him, and you know, there's things like that kind of touch on like stuff that, like, even like if this was like how it was in the 40s, this was how it was when I was growing up too, like with Christmas specials. Of course, theirs was on the radio, whereas we had the TV, and you know how kids would go out and play in the snow, and you know, when you're walking to and from school, if there was somebody that picked on you, you tried to find a different way to walk to and from school. The bundling up, you know, his younger brother, he gets bundled up to the extent that he can't even like put his arms down. When his arms get pushed down, they come back up. Getting bundled up like that, like you're in the North Pole and it's, you know, 50 below zero or something like that in a blizzard. So there's just like a lot of things that I guess I found relatable between growing up in the 80s and I guess how things even were in the 40s. Like some things never changed. I kind of think that they've changed now, unfortunately, but his youngest brother, his name is Randy, by the way. And Randy also, his character is that he rather play with his food than eat. There's a lot of kind of things in the movie that I guess I could relate to, that I was like, oh yeah, man, that's totally like me, or that's totally like, you know, me and my friends, or I knew somebody that was like that. So I guess I can appreciate the film. They did a good job at conveying something like that, but I don't know if they were conveying that for the 80s, the time it was filmed, to try to connect with people, or if it was really like that in the 40s. I don't know. I don't know that a 9-year-old in the 40s would say fuck when attempting to change a tire with his dad. Now, he didn't say fuck in the movie, he says fudge, but his voiceover, older Ralphie, says that he didn't say fudge. He said the actual F word. And then when they get in the car, you know, Dad's like, or the old man, he's like, you're not gonna believe what your son just said, you know? And they like lose their shit, and Ralphie has to have a bar of soap in his mouth when they get home. And a bar of soap was like a thing when I was a kid too. So, you know, I don't know, 40 years, you know, separating the two times. Either things didn't change, or they just borrowed things from current times and said this is how it was in the 40s as well, and maybe it really wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't born in the 40s. I don't know. I know some people that are alive now that were born in the 40s, but probably too young to remember exactly, you know, how it was, I guess. I guess I could ask them about the 50s, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Overall, the cast is pretty good. The direction is pretty good. I mean, it's a good movie. From beginning to end, it's a good movie. You're gonna have to find out if it made my top 5 Christmas list. I am glad that I watched it from beginning to end. I don't want to get into too many details because you're gonna probably be able to know it if it's on my top 5 or not, or maybe even in my top 10 if it's not on my top 5, my 6 through 10. I'm glad I watched it. Okay, and it is a well-balanced, well-rounded movie. It's got some flaws. All movies do. It's not a perfect Christmas film. Okay, I'm going to say that much. And it connected with me. I didn't think it was going to. It's not a long haul to sit through. It's like an hour and a half. And, you know, I suggest that if you haven't seen it, do give it a watch. It's probably going to be on like some major television channels this month if it hasn't been already. And I liked it. I liked it. You know, it took me this long. It took me, you know, around 35 years to actually watch the whole thing from beginning to end. And it was like one of those movies where when I talk about Christmas movies to people, if a Christmas Story comes up at all, it's usually not by me, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't see it. And they'll be like, you didn't see A Christmas Story? I'm like, no, I tried. I just can't sit through it, you know? It was like back in the day, it's like the Christmas version of Shawshank Redemption. I mean, there was a time where I was talking to people about Stephen King movies or whatever, and people would talk about Shawshank Redemption, and I'd be like, yeah, I've never seen it. And they'd be like, you didn't see Shawshank Redemption? Shawshank Redemption is a great fucking movie. Love Shawshank Redemption. So, yeah, I don't think there's any other films where anybody has ever said, you've never seen that? I think I've taken care of the only 2 in my lifetime now. There people have said, you know, exclaimed their surprise that I've never seen A Christmas Story. So I've seen it. And, I mean, that's all I can tell you right now. What I will do is, when we have the episode of the top 5 Christmas movies, if it's in there, if it's in my list, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. And dive a little bit more deeper, as we usually do with those movie list episodes. If it's not, I'll kind of leave a footnote in the video that delves a little bit deeper into A Christmas Story. So it'll kind of like also be like a part 2 to this video, if you will. So that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. I'm glad I watched it. It's a good movie. I will give it a thumb up. Okay. And, you know, the scores for the movie online, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, when you search for it on Amazon, The ratings don't lie. I mean, they all say it's a good movie. Audiences do, you know, like A Christmas Story, and I will agree with that sentiment. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Rewind and Rewatch, aka R&R. If you liked the video, please click the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe. And leave a comment below and let me know what your favorite Christmas movie is. There's going to be 1 or 2 chances to do that. The second one's going to be on the top 5 Christmas list video. So that's going to do it, and we'll see you guys on R&R next month.